Years ago, when I was a student at Yale University in America, I had a wonderful privilege of a great friendship with a man who was an engineer. I was an art history major. I didn't know anything about engineering, so I asked my friend Ted, "Tell me what you learn when you study engineering." Oh, he said, "It's simple. What we learn is the most important step to a good solution is to get the right definition of the real problem." I thought that was a very sensible thing, but as the years have gone by, I realized it's not just sensible, it's a really marvelous way of thinking about any kind of a problem. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And then, what solution is best for that problem? Many of us in investing, candidly, define the problem in a way that isn't really the right way to define it. Let me give you an example. This is an example of me making a mistake and then fortunately catching the mistake and putting things right. I was the chair of the investment committee for the Whitehead Institute of Biomedical Research, which is affiliated with MIT. And it's all about engineering. So you would think that I would have learned something through the engineering process and my friend Ted's mandate that would have been very helpful. Actually, it came about a little bit differently. As chair of the investment committee, the question before the House was, how much should we have in bonds? Our advisor had said probably 40% in bonds would be about right. If you asked him why, he would say, because that would give you a more stable asset base to draw upon for the annual spending out of the endowment, and that would be helpful to financing the institution. Sounds sensible, but it was not. It was actually nonsense. Here's why. If you start with the cost of technology to support advanced biomedical research rises very rapidly, more rapidly than does the stock market. Rough estimate, about 9 to 10% per year. And I can assure you, the Whitehead Institute was a very advanced group of scientists, one of the very frontiers of biomedical research. So they needed all the latest, greatest, and best equipment. And they needed quite a lot of it. And of course, they were supported by a large number of technicians who also needed to have first-rate equipment. The cost of the equipment rising at 9%. A reasonable estimate of the normal rate of return in the stock market might be as high as 7%. Whoops, our costs are going to go up faster than our incomes from the endowment. And so the endowment is going to be under terrific pressure to produce. And if we don't manage the endowment structure correctly and make investments in the right assets, we're going to run out of money gradually, but definitely, and it will put the institution in a very disadvantaged position. So I said to myself, how would Ted define the problem? I think he would say, the problem starts with you need to have a higher rate of return than is available in a 60-40 stock and bond portfolio mix. That'll give you something like 5.5%, 6%. But you're going to be growing costs. That's something like 9%. And gradually, you will run out of financial resources. So I thought to myself, am I defining the problem correctly? And the answer was, no, I was not. I was not looking at the total portfolio of what the Institute was working with. I forgot that the National Institutes of Health, which does substantial funding for research in American science, was going to be a steady provider because our scientists were so good at their work and they made wonderful applications for further funding. So that would be one source. Howard Hughes Medical Institution would also be providing steadily. There was, of course, annual giving. Wasn't very much, but it was something, and it's worth keeping in mind. And there was another kind of giving. Every once in a while, someone would make a very substantial gift, and that should be included in the total portfolio that was available. Aha, wait a minute, there was yet another. Because the research was creating such exciting new developments, every once in a while, it was possible to convert a discovery into a new pharmaceutical. Major manufacturers of pharmaceuticals would be interested in buying the rights to use that new advanced insight. And of course, if they did, they would be paying money to the institution. If you looked at the history, it turned out to be a fairly regular, irregular flow of incomes. But it was an important part of the total picture if you're looking at the total financial picture of the institution. When you put all of those different things together, most of which were over a reasonable, let's say 5-year time period, reasonably predictable and very steady, they were equivalent to bonds, but much better in terms of return than bonds were. And so we changed the portfolio structure from 60-40 to 100% in stocks, and the rest of the flows of the institution were more or less like bonds. And they were steady, they were not going to grow particularly, but they were reliable. Over time, very reliable. So let me convert that to what might be important to you to think about as an individual for yourself. What is your present wealth? Most people, when asked that question, would say, well, I've got so much invested in stocks and bonds, and that's what they think of. And then they try to get the right answer to what mix of stocks and bonds would be best for them, starting with that definition. My bet is that for almost every person who's involved in investing, that's a mistake. It's not the right definition. And if you don't start with the right definition, you won't be able to get to the right solution. So let me give you an example. I own my own home. A home is not a money-making activity. It's a source of great satisfaction and pleasure for our family. But at some time, that home or house will be sold, and it is, in fact, whether I recognize it or not, it is, in fact, an asset that I should include in my total portfolio. It's an asset that's a lot like bonds. It's stable. Stock market goes up and down much more than the value of the home goes up and down. It rises roughly with inflation or replacement cost, and it's got a steady, predictable value out into the future that I should include as part of my total portfolio. What else might be included in the total portfolio? Well, at my age, of course, I can't do this. But if you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, you can do this because you know that you're going to have earning power in the future. You probably have a pretty good idea of what's going to be your earning power. And if you don't have a pretty good idea, you can find out rather quickly by asking around inside your own organization or family and friends, what kind of incomes come to people who do the kind of work that I do? Then you do a little bit of analysis of how long will you be working? And those two together create a future flow of income that is easily converted into a net present value asset today. For most of us, we never ever think about that future income and how important it really is. So, in my view, young people should be very substantially invested in stocks, equities, not investing in bonds, because their future incomes are assured to a substantial degree, and they will be coming their way on schedule and are in fact part of their total portfolio. Each of us is different. Each of us has different value of home. Each of us has different future incomes. Each of us has different present assets. Each of us has different risk tolerances. Each of us has different expectations as to how long we're going to live. Some of us will have hopes that we can do things philanthropically at the end of our lives. All of these things are part of defining who are you as an investor and what do you most want to accomplish as an investor for your lifetime, for your family, your friends, and for the values that you really care about. As you're doing that, please, please, please be sure that you've got the correct definition of what your problem is and the correct definition of what your sources of value or resources are, so that you can take advantage of everything that you could know and should know as you think about what kind of investing you want to be doing. And then, like my friend Ted advised, with a correct definition of the problem, you can then develop a correct definition of the answer to the problem.